Hey everyone, it's ZombieBiscotti, and I am back with Seduce Me Too. It is the sequel for the first Seduce Me game. For those of you that didn't watch the playthrough or don't remember, I ended up with Diana. It was a blind playthrough. I hadn't looked at previous Let's Plays, and I did make a lot of mistakes, so hopefully this time I make much better choices. So when you first launch Seduce Me Too, it has all these different color majiggies. And so each color represents a path for whichever demon you ended up with. So purple is Diana, red is Eric, yellow is James, green is Sam, blue is Matthew, and then gray is Damien. So since I ended up with Diana, I am going to go ahead and go with purple.
Hold on there!
Oh.
Before you start the game, I need to ask you a few things. Don't want you getting lost now.
Okay, yeah, I don't want to
First
get
of all,
lost either.
have you read the first story, Seduce Me the Otome?
So,
Like,
I
seriously read it.
read
No skimming,
it,
no pretending to read it.
but
no.
I did do
It's
the
okay
first
if you haven't,
game.
but there are a lot of things in this game that you won't understand unless you've fully experienced and understood that story first.
All right then. Yes.
Okay.
Oh, more
awesome.
questions.
Next question. You do know this is Diana's route, right? The
Yes.
succubus princess that tried to bring the boys back to the demon world?
Yes, I do.
Oh,
Yep.
Awesome. All right then. Diana's a very interesting character, huh?
Oh, interesting indeed.
Anyway, I have one last question for you. Some people like hearing the trigger warnings before they start games, while others don't really care and just want to play. It's cool either way, but do you want to know about some of the content listed in the game?
So, I guess I don't really care either way, but just so everyone's
No
aware.
problem. It's my pleasure.
Here.
Wow.
Oh,
This game is
great.
recommended for players ages 18 and up. Trigger
I
warnings
am
include suicide,
18 and up.
war, torture, mentions of rape, and a large amount of violence and sexual content.
You know, when I played the first one, it talked a lot about these trigger warnings, and I don't feel like I really came across them. But then again, I guess it just really depends on what selections
you can play this
you
game
make.
without needing to go through the sex scenes and still get the good endings. Consent is important.
Yes.
I think that should be everything. All right. Phew, that took a while.
It did. Thanks, Kay.
You forgot something.
Uh-oh.
Huh? What did I forget?
You forgot about the disclaimer.
Oh, crap! Oh, how could I have forgotten about that?
It's fine, I'll take care of it. This game was produced by Michaela Laws
This is a
using the
cute way to
Renkai visual
introduce
novel
the
engine.
game.
We truly hope you enjoy this story.
Thanks, Diana. Now, don't you have a war to go fight?
I do. I just wanted to make sure everything was in order before the story began. I'll take my leave now.
Thanks, Di.
Do not call me Di.
Note to self,
Anyway,
do not call
we
her
really
Di.
do hope you like the story. Have fun. See you at the end.
All right. What is your name? Okay. ZombieBiscotti. Oh. ZB. Alrighty. I was in love with the succubus. Succubus. It was true. I had fallen for the charms of a succubus, and I was about to dive headfirst into the demon world with her to save her kingdom.
Do you have any regrets?
None. No regrets. Hashtag YOLO. I smiled as Diana held me in her arms and carried us both through the night sky. We had shared a sweet kiss, the first of hopefully many in the future, and were about to cast a spell to enter the demon world. Diana looked to the ground that was far below us and pointed her free hand down towards it, closing her eyes.
Revetar tenebras, Yerato locum, pater portas.
As the last word left her mouth, a large purple pentagram appeared in the grass before twisting and becoming a black void. I gripped onto Diana, scared at what I was seeing.
Last chance.
I gulped at the sight, not sure of what to make of this. Was this really what I wanted to do? My curiosity, however, guided my decision and forced me to take a deep breath. I closed my eyes and let calm wash over me before looking up at Diana. Let's go. Let's just jump into a black hole in the middle of this garden. That's totally what I would do. Diana smiled and wrapped both arms around me, laying a protective hand over my head.
Hang on.
I tightened my grip on Diana, obeying her command. As they held tight, I felt air quickly begin to rush past our bodies as Diana tilted back and began to let us fall towards the ground. Was she insane? I looked at Diana, seeing her smirk at me before closing her eyes. I did the same, naturally preparing for an impact with the ground. What I felt was a cool rush of energy brushing over my skin, as if I had fallen into water. I slowly opened my eyes and found myself staring into a vast, dark space, holding on to a woman who was no longer wearing clothes. I was clinging to a woman who had no clothing, but instead had purple marks across her skin and horns adorning her head. However, I could tell that this woman was still Diana just by looking into her eyes, and the fact that it looks like a naked Diana with horns. Diana smiled at me and kissed my forehead before tightening her hold on me and muttering softly,
Ad Lilith Castra.
I held onto her body as I felt us begin to move through the space, as if a giant fan had pushed us forward. Onward we continued through the darkness, with me unsure of where we were going and Diana guiding the way. We began to slow, and soon a small light appeared, slowly growing as we got closer to it. I had to shut my eyes as it began to consume us. I felt weightless. I couldn't feel anything except the woman in my arms, and it felt somehow exquisite. I wanted to drown in this feeling, become lost in it. However, our journey through the light was coming to an end. The light around us faded away, and soon I found myself lying on Diana as she lay on a stone floor. The air, however, smelt of fire and blood. I looked up, seeing fire everywhere in sight. What the hell? This was the demon world? Well, what were you expecting? Demons, fire. I think those go in hand, not unicorns and ponies. A loud shout forced me to look over and see a man running at me with a spear and a rage-filled expression. I screamed and rolled off Diana, scooting away to avoid being skewered. As he continued towards me, I screamed, "No!" I looked up to see Diana kneeling in front of me and gripping the man's spear, pointing it away from her. The man stared wide-eyed at Diana as she glared back.
My lady, you live?
Of course I do. I told you I would return, and thus I have.
The fire in the background is really loud. The man gave a small sigh of relief, lowering his weapon and propping it up to lean against it. As I examined him now that he wasn't gunning for me, he was wounded and exhausted, panting heavily and gripping his spear tightly.
I'm so glad.
As he finally toppled over, Diana gasped and rushed over, kneeling beside him.
Settle!
I rushed over as well, wanting to see what was going on. Who was he? Why did he attack me? Why was the room on fire?
Settle! What happened?
We were attacked by the demon lord. He took advantage of your absence.
I began to cough violently. We needed to get out of this room wherever we were. Diana, we need to get out of here. Diana nodded and grabbed my hand in Sarah's, chanting under her breath. The room around us began to shift, as if it were changing instead of us moving. Soon we were outside a castle, staring at it as flames erupted from each window. So he was just chilling in a burning castle, just like... happened to be in the spot that we poofed into. Okay. What was happening? Well, the castle's on fire. Diana's face was of pure shock, staring at the castle in absolute terror. All of the color, besides for the purple marks on her skin, had faded to a pale white in horror.
We drove them back, but the flames are too powerful.
At that moment, something in Diana's eyes changed. Her anger sparked as she stood, quickly walking around us and towards the castle. Diana!
Come! I command thee, white winds! Crush these fires beneath your hands!
I stared as the wind and the air quickly began to pick up, and a purple glow began to surround Diana's body. It was like a storm was rushing towards us, but there was no rain or thunder, just wind. The winds forced back the flames that danced in the windows, and smoke began to rise from each one, signaling the death of the fire. The windows continued to be filled with wind and air, most likely to kill the flames deep within the walls. I, however, could only stare at Diana. Her body was rigid, and her gaze was intently focused on the stone castle. Soon the winds began to die out, and all that oh, I forget how much reading this game is. All that was left was smoke rising from the windows.
You did it. How?
Diana looked to Sarah, intensity still embedded in her eyes.
Where are the king and queen?
I heard Sarah's breath hitch, and I turned to look at him. He had a look of pure pain and guilt. What had happened? Diana walked over and stared down at him, now almost glaring daggers at him as she clenched her fists at her sides.
Speak, Seduce!
The imp demons. While we were fighting the flames in the army, the imp demons snuck through our defenses.
Oh. My heart, despite not fully understanding the situation, began to tighten. Something was incredibly wrong. Sarah shut his eyes as a pair of demons I assumed to be allies rushed over and began casting magic over his body, closing his wounds.
They snuck into their room.
Diana suddenly turned and bolted towards the castle, causing me to jump up. Diana! I began to sprint after her, following her inside the castle and trying to keep up with her. Her panicked breath kept me following her direction despite her fast twists and turns through the ashy corridors.
No.
I could hear Diana sobbing, praying as she ran. I did my best to keep up, not wanting to lose her and not wanting her to be alone right now. We turned into a long hallway that had a pair of golden doors at the end. They were unscathed, as if the flames had not disturbed the door or perhaps the room behind it.
Please be alive. Please!
Diana bolted for the doors and began to pull them open, grunting at the weight. I stopped running, skidding forward from the abrupt stop. Whomever she wanted alive, I hoped that they were as well. As the doors finally opened, however, the foul stench of blood erupted from behind them, the scent filling my nostrils. Gah! Diana flung the doors wide open and could only stare at the sight we both saw. Blood. Blood covered the floor, the walls, the ceiling. The entire room was painted in gore, skin, bone, and massive amounts of blood. Only 3 things, barely coated in red, stood in the middle of the room on the ground. 2 broken crowns and a small tiara that was barely large enough to fit a newborn's head.
No.
Diana slowly walked into the room, the blood on the ground painting her bare feet, and she fell to her knees in front of the items, staring down at them. I couldn't bring myself to enter the room with her. I watched as she lifted them to her chest, curling her shoulders over herself and shaking almost violently.
Father. Mother. Audible.
Oh my god. She had a baby brother. As she continued to grieve over the ornaments in her hands, a dark, almost deadly and evil-looking aura surrounded her body. It began to flicker and grow like a dark flame that wanted to engulf the room she knelt in. As it reached an apex and began to violently flicker through the room around her, Diana arched back and screamed to the ceiling, her voice heavily laced with magic, pain, and rage. Oh my god, that gave me chills. Watching her body burn in the intense black and purple flame-like energy made my heart stop in fear. I had never seen her like this, and I was scared as to where her anger would drive her next. Okay, so my demon lover just found out her parents and I'm assuming baby brother died. And do I just watch her so I don't get chopped up into pieces, or do I stop her? I feel like I should stop her because she's my demon lover and I should comfort her. As heartbreaking as the situation was, I couldn't let anger consume her. Not like this. If she wanted to vent her rage, then it was better to aim it at the ones who wronged her, not let it burn in the room where her family died. I stepped into the room, blocking the waves of energy from my face with my arms, and eventually made my way to the screaming Diana. Diana! My words couldn't reach her. I stepped closer, almost towering over her, before dropping to my knees, bracing myself and wrapping my arms around Diana. Her screaming stopped and her body froze within my arms. Diana quaked like a shivering child in my arms as I pressed my forehead against her hair. Diana, we'll get your revenge, but you must save that rage for the fight. I was met with silence as my reply. After a moment, Diana finally slumped into my arms while the energy around her died out.
You're right.
Diana and I left the room with her unable to turn around and look back. We walked through the ashy corridors of the castle, Diana silenced by the side and by her own grief. My heart was heavy for her. Still, the demon lord who had done this was still a threat at large, and who knew when he would return. Diana led the way to a room which, as expected, was as burnt as could be. However, Diana waved her hand through the air, casting some sort of silent spell. Through some sort of... Oh god, why did they put a really big word right here? Through some sort of prestidigitation. This is supposed to be a serious moment. I'm sorry, but I can't read that word. The ash and the soot... Now I'm adding words. The ash and soot in the room vanished, and the furniture and decor were repaired. We at least stepped in with Diana slowly lying down on the bed, unable to carry on any further. Looking at Diana's face, her eyes were puffy and red, while her skin almost became void of any color, beyond the taint of her demon marks. If she wasn't breathing, one would assume that she was dead. Diana stared at the ceiling, a world of emotions swimming in her eyes. Despite what had happened, at least she spoke.
I need to send you back.
What? Now is not the time. Oh, serious. To think about me, and I knew it. Besides, I came here for a reason. I wasn't going to go back knowing that Diana needed support. I had no regrets in coming here, and I would help her through this. No, Diana.
It's too dangerous here.
I don't care, Diana. Diana sat up slowly and looked to me, a form of weak anger in her eyes. However, she knew that it was fruitless to argue with me. After all, she had made a deal with me, and I could see the obligation to obey buried under her anger. Diana closed her eyes and lowered her head.
The demon lord will most likely return.
And we'll be ready for him. I gently took Diana's hand and lifted her chin so that she had to look at me. The anger that was plaguing her melted into sadness and broken hope as she stared back into my gaze. They were remnants of rogue tears adorning her face, and seeing her so scarred made me frown. I knew that we would get through this. We just needed to rest for now. We would deal with the issues this world brought after.
My lady?
Diana and I turned our heads to see Sero by the open door, and I stepped away from Diana, giving her space. Behind him, multiple soldiers, servants, and other demons rushed down the hall, most likely to check for other issues and possibly try to fix the damage on the castle.
Yes, Sero?
Who is this human?
For a brief moment, I could see a look of disdain in his eyes as he looked to me. However, it only lasted a second as he looked at Diana, waiting for her to reply to him.
Sero, this is my guest. She came back with me to...
Diana looked at me, trying to find the words in her eyes. What was I to her? My curiosity bubbled as I also awaited the completion of her answer. Ooh, it's always tricky because it's like, even like when you're in an actual relationships, it's like, can I call you my girlfriend or my boyfriend? Or should I call you my friend? With heavy quotation marks.
She came to aid me in this war.
Okay.
But what of your fiancé? What of the other sons?
They are gone. They have disappeared into the human world, and I can no longer trace them. I have failed.
The guilt and grief in Diana's voice deepened, most likely reminding herself that she saw the result of failing moments ago. Sero, however, stepped up to Diana and knelt in front of her, surprising me. What was he doing? He was a guard, first off. Why was he being so bold enough to step to her? He's stepping up to my woman.
You didn't fail, my lady. The Demon Lord attacked us despite giving us his word that he would wait for you to return. He broke his end of the agreement.
True.
I know.
Staring at Diana and Sero, I could see that they had a very close and deep connection. Was Sero a friend, or was he something more? I could recognize the emotions within Sero's eyes as he looked up at Diana. He looked to be in love with her, He looked to be in love with her, or at least had some form of ultimate care for his lady. Sero gently took one of Diana's hands and placed his lips upon it. Instantly, I could almost see energy flow from his body into hers from the kiss alone. Was this how energy transferal worked when you weren't the giver or receiver? The color in Diana's skin returned, and she let out a sigh with her body relaxing at last. Sero, however, continued to keep his lips over her hand. Something in my gut irked me about him. No, clear my throat. Not that I was against Diana getting energy, but Sero seemed to be extremely cozy with her, and being that she was someone who I potentially wished to be closer with, this was now an obstacle I had to slowly break Diana from. Diana and Sero both looked up to me, with Sero lifting his head from Diana's hand. At least it worked. Realizing what was going on, Diana looked to Sero and smiled nervously before pulling her hand away from him. That's right, snap, snap.
Thank you, Sero.
Sero, however, stared at me, most likely knowing why I did what I had done. Another flash of disgust flashed in my eyes before he looked to Diana and bowed his head.
I am forever here to serve.
Sero stood and stepped back, looking to his mistress and to me.
Do we plan to retaliate, my lady?
We will. I expect the Demon Lord will come for a second attack, not realizing that I have returned.
What can we do then? Diana looked to me, a small glimmer of fear in her eyes, but her resolve rekindled and she let a serious visage cover her expression.
I will meet him on the battlefield should he come again.
My lady, you've just returned.
That I have, but the Demon Lord will not care if he learns of my return. If anything, news of my return will spur him to attack sooner than later. I must be there and stop him.
Diana looked to Sero with a cold expression, making Sero stand up straight like the guard he was meant to be.
Tell everyone to mend their wounds and prepare for a second invasion tomorrow. I expect the Demon Lord will be ruthless enough to attack in the morning. Let everyone know as well that their princess has returned.
Sero nodded and turned to the door to do his job. Before he exited the room, however, Diana called out one last thing to him which seemed to make him freeze.
And when you are done, please retire to my room. I will rest here for the night with my guest.
As you wish, my lady.
With that, Sarah left and closed the door behind him. The way Sarah answered Diana seemed forced, but I could understand why. After all, if he had feelings for her, I became an obstacle for him as I was with her. That didn't stop me, however, from wondering where I stood with Diana. She was going to stay here with me? This was my room? Diana let out a sigh and moved in the bed to rest against the back wall of the bed.
Come, we must rest.
Yes, ma'am. I nodded and walked over, lying beside her. However, instead of Diana laying down, she guided my head to rest on her lap. You're not going to sleep?
Demons don't sleep, dear. At least not in this world.
Oh, interesting. So then why do they have bed? Oh. Why not?
Because if we shut our eyes for too long, then we open ourselves up for someone to take advantage of us, or kill us when we're not aware.
I gulped, now worried and frightened to sleep. Diana chuckled, however, and petted my head.
You can sleep, however. I will be resting, but my eyes will remain open.
Can you truly rest like that?
Demons and humans are different, dear. Demons can function for years without needing to rest, as long as they continually feed on energy. However, demons can rest to stop spending energy. Thus why we have beds.
That's funny. It's like, oh, we better answer this question. My curiosity began to peck at me again, but my exhaustion took control of my body. As I felt my eyes gradually shut, I could hear Diana whisper.
I hope that you don't mind me taking your energy as you sleep.
Before I let sleep consume me, I shook my head. It was all right. Diana needed as much energy as she could for whatever the Demon Lord had in mind. I felt almost a bit honored that she was taking energy from me, as odd as it was. At last, sleep consumed me. Despite what was happening around me, the world of sleep was peaceful and calm. For the moment, I could truly be at rest. At least for a moment.
My sweet Isaiah.
Huh? I looked around the darkness of my dream, trying to pin down the direction of Sarah's voice. Why was he in my dream? There is no reason why he should have been here. The sound of footsteps echoed in my head, causing me to grip over it and look around frantically. What was happening? At last, a line in the darkness opened up to reveal it as an open door. Opening it was Sarah with a kind smile on his face, staring into the dark space. What? I looked to him, but he didn't seem to notice me as he stepped into the room and walked past me. I followed his walk and gasped at what he was walking towards. Now, illuminated by light, I took in the sight of Diana in a jail cell on her hands and knees, weak and frail as she stared at the one approaching her.
Sarah, what is happening? Why am I...
Shh. Everything is just fine, my lady.
My heart stopped as I watched Sarah kneel in front of Diana and slid his hand between the bars to lift her chin. Diana seemed to nuzzle his hand softly and unconsciously, making him chuckle.
Soon enough, I will destroy the Demon Lord and hand you the throne of the entire world. Everyone will bow to you as their queen and ruler, as they rightfully should.
Sarah, I don't understand.
You may not understand now, but you will in time. I promise.
Diana crawled closer to Sarah, wrapping her hands around the bars to keep her up.
Where is she? What happened to the human?
For a moment, Sarah stared at Diana, looking completely oblivious to what she meant. Hey, I'm right here! Despite knowing that what I was seeing was a dream, I instinctively called out to Diana, hoping she would see me regardless. To my displeasure, she didn't.
Who are you talking about, my queen?
You know who, Zero. She...
Zero silenced Diana by gripping her chin hard, making her gasp and stare up in shock at him.
My lady, I don't know who you are talking about.
Diana whimpered in his hold in fright. Fear painted over Diana's expression as Zero pressed his forehead against the bars to stare deep into her eyes. I felt myself rush at Zero and try to grab him, but my hands merely phased through his body like I was a ghost.
My lady, you must stay here for now.
Why?
Diana's single word died out as she stared into Zero's eyes. Something in her eyes began to shift from red to gold. However, her black pupils slowly morphed into glowing black crosses. What was Zero doing?
Because I have not yet finished the Demon Lord, my love.
My love? Why the sudden change in name? I could only watch as Zero leaned back with a grin.
Once I finish this war, then you may come out and fulfill your destiny. With only me at your side.
Oh, this punk. Staring at Diana, I watched as she began to shed tears, but they were not clear as water, but black as oil. On her chest, a black burn in the shape of a cross appeared, glowing with some sort of dark aura.
May those useless memories burn away. Remember only the one who has served you his entire life.
Zero! My words were futile, but I couldn't stand there in silence. However, as Diana's tears finally stopped, the stains on her cheeks not dying, along her skin. Zero stared into Diana's eyes, burning his gaze into them.
Now, do you remember the human?
Who?
No, it couldn't be. The burn on her chest flashed a bright white aura before settling down, revealing the permanence it had over her skin. It was a real scar on her flesh, no longer a figment of magic. Zero smiled lovingly at Diana before guiding her head forward and leaning in to kiss her between the bars. Diana closed her eyes and practically moaned against his lips, most likely feeling some sort of energy from it. However, Zero pulled away gently and made Diana pant slightly in need. Was she that desperate for energy now?
Never mind, my love. Forget I said anything.
Zero ran his fingers over Diana's cheeks, causing Diana to shudder at the touch, and let out a pleasured shot. Oh my god, I cannot!
Now rest. Nothing will harm you in here.
Diana nodded before slowly laying to the side and letting her body slowly shift to slumber. With another chuckle, Zero stood and turned around.
That human's life for a stone destiny. A perfect trait, if I do say so myself.
I snarled and rushed at him, but wound up running through his body and falling to the floor. Zero walked back towards the open door and stood by it to look back at Diana with an almost evil-looking smile.
Nothing will keep us apart anymore, Isaiah.
I'm guessing Isaiah is like her demon name. I jumped up and ran at him, but as he stepped through and closed the door, I found myself shooting up out of bed to sit up, panting. Gah! Gah! Oh my god.
What? What's wrong?
I looked over to see Diana sitting in the same spot as she was when I fell asleep and staring at me with wide, concerned eyes. There was no mark on her chest and no crosses in her eyes, which made me feel somewhat relieved. I looked around, trying to see if Zero was in the room, but he was nowhere to be found.
Are you all right?
Oh, I see full body Diana. Okay, so do I tell her my dream or do I let it go? I feel if I tell her, it will cause like a rift between her and Zero and distrust. But then I feel like if I don't tell her, it might bite me back in the ass. So I'm just going to be like, I'm just going to tell her straight up. I had to tell her about the dream. I turned to her and took her hands, making Diana gasp and stare at me in even more confused shock. I had a dream last night. Sarah locked you in some sort of jail cell and wiped your memories of me, and I couldn't do anything, and...
Wait, stop. What?
Diana took one of her hands from mine and placed it on my head. Did she seriously not believe me? I glared as she stared at my hand, as she stared at her hand. It's true.
I believe you, but I want to see it for myself.
Oh. I stared at her, now realizing that she was taking energy from me from my forehead. Diana closed her eyes and remained silent for a moment. How would she react? As she pulled her hand away, she smiled at me.
It was a nightmare, dear. I'm sorry you had it. But I can assure you, no magic like what you saw exists, nor would Sarah ever do that to me.
I stared. I could see the genuine feelings behind her words, but something in my gut wouldn't let this go. How could she be so sure that magic like that didn't exist? What if Sarah was a terrible person? Now, he did say something about trading a human life for, like, a stone destiny. So I think if the nightmare is, like, some kind of foretelling event, that maybe he makes a deal with the Demon Lord. But what if...
Sarah has been with me ever since I was a child. I would know if he was a bad person. There's nothing to...
Suddenly, the door to the room burst open, causing Diane and I to separate and stare at the intruder. It was a soldier who seemed to be a runner for the army, judging from his outfit.
Princess, the Demon Lord approaches!
Alright, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop here. Leave you on a cliffhanger for episode 1. Tune in for the next one. I'll just pick up where I left off. Alright.